I moved to Thailand with nothing more than £15,000 and a dream. I had a dream to change my life, like all the YouTubers I'd seen say how they had changed theirs. How they changed their lives with nothing more than a camera and hard work. I wasn't going to Thailand thinking I was going to be a YouTuber, but I was going there thinking that I would succeed and escape the rat race that everyone was talking about needing to escape. I was already of an age where I thought if I didn't try now, then I would never try, and I would get to 60 or 70 years old and look back with regret. I didn't want to be somebody who looked back and regretted not following my dreams, so that's why I decided when I was 52 that it was now or never. As much as I would have liked to have been a YouTuber, many of them sustained me throughout COVID. I wasn't, though, someone confident enough behind the camera. Not only that, there seemed to be so many people doing it, yet most people didn't seem to be making a living from it. So to have to compete with that made me feel like there was no point even trying. What I could do was try to work online. What I did for a job at home was something that I could easily find online, yet I never had the confidence to try. I thought I would do things in stages. While I still had my job, I would look for online work. If I found online work and I started it and things were going well, then I would finally quit my job and move to Thailand. That's what my plan was, and I will let you know exactly how things played out. It's important to talk about why I chose Thailand in the first place. I'd been there on holiday 3 times, and every single time I went, it was the best holiday I'd ever had. I went once with my ex-wife to Phuket, and I guess that time that I went, I was one of the tourists who went to Thailand but didn't really go to Thailand. If you know Thailand, you know exactly what I'm saying. There are people who go to Thailand because it's just another holiday, and there are people that go to Thailand because Thailand is their be-all and end-all. I was one of the people who had Thailand as my be-all and end-all, and by the time I moved there in 2022, I was one of those guys. That opinion came from 2 holidays I took to Thailand after I got divorced. Thailand was a place you could go to forget all your worries back at home. A place where you could forget about how boring your life was and how much you hated your job. I was thinking about trying to move there before COVID. And then when that happened, that put that idea to rest. And I just got consumed by YouTube content. And I saw the guys doing it as the guys living my life. Yet I wasn't even living my own life. So that's why I started to think about working online, or at least giving it a go. When it comes to Thailand, there is no place quite like Pattaya. I consider that city to be the pinnacle of global excellence, in more ways than one. A place where people like me could go to pretend to be someone they weren't. To pretend to be the guy who could go out every single day spending money like it's nothing. Because when I went originally, it was actually that cheap. It wasn't just the bars, it was everything that went along with it. The beach and beach road with all the little different sections that lead eventually into Walking Street. Second road with all the restaurants and the few malls along there. And you could drive not too far away and have a completely different atmosphere. There is nowhere quite like Pattaya. And it was a dream to be surrounded by the badness of Pattaya on a daily basis that made me take the plunge and see if I could make Thailand work. I was quietly confident that I would get to Thailand, land on my feet working an online job that could allow me to save money. My hope was by the time I was 60, I would have enough money to be able to retire. That was going to be quite hard because I was starting from basically nothing. I had £15,000 saved and that was it. I didn't have a house, no investments, and I didn't have many prospects of saving money back at home because everything I earned just went on bills, and more bills. I watched each YouTuber as if they were gods amongst men. I still watch them today and wish I was still in Thailand. And it was at the start of 2022 when I joined a few freelance websites to see if I was going to be lucky enough to find work. It's not important what my job was or what my profession is. It wasn't paid a lot of money, but I created a profile on a few sites and I started to apply to positions listed. I got premium on a few of these sites, which meant I had to pay a bit of money. And I was immediately quite disheartened by one of the sites because I found that you were able to pay money to have your application put ahead of others. That seemed to be a very unfair system because why should you have to pay for that? Yet it also meant that when you were applying for a particular role, it's not going to be flooded with applications. At least I hoped. So I was happy to pay a bit of money just to see if I was able to even land an interview. My days for the start of 2022 was waking up 2 hours before I needed to set off for work. And I'd spend all that time scouring the freelance sites for jobs, sending applications off for things that I knew I could do, and then going to work and persistently checking my emails to see if I'd heard back. I didn't hear back from most applications, but around a month later, after I started applying, I did hear back from one. They asked me to arrange an interview and told me to pick some times, so I left work early and went home to see what was going to happen. I was extremely nervous when I was speaking to them. They were actually a company based in Canada and needed a native English speaker who spoke English with an accent that was either English, American, Canadian, Australian, and because I was English, that meant I was suitable for the role. I spoke to them at length, did a few role plays, and at the end of it, they offered me work. It would have been 40-hour weeks, and this would have been working Canadian hours, and the income would have been quite a big reduction from what I was earning now. Yet I did know that if I was earning it in Thailand, I would still have a better time on that money than I could on the money I was earning at home in England. Because it was Canadian hours, there was a way based on the different shifts that I could continue doing my job and attempt to do this for a little bit of time to see if it was what they said it was, and also to see if I could do it. I was still skeptical about the very notion of online work, and it all felt so alien to me, while at the same time being extremely exciting at thinking about being able to do this. Being able to move permanently to a country I wanted to move to more than anywhere else. I can remember when they offered me the position. The way the work would be you'd sign into the freelance website and there would be some software that would be installed to prove that you were doing the work. And then the website would guarantee that you were going to be paid. You knew that even if the company that employed you didn't pay, the site would. You could look at their 5-star reviews about how many people had been paid and there was nothing to worry about, but there was always something in the back of my mind to give me some kind of suspicion because I'd never done it before. But it did give me confidence that I could at least try. I started the following Monday, finished work, going home and starting on the shift that fit into my time. It was very tiring to do 2 jobs at once, but after doing it for a week and them saying how happy they were with me, that I was doing a good job, that's when I had confidence that I could just go to Thailand and do that job from there. The amount I was being paid was about £1,000 a month, so it wasn't a fortune, but that was enough to keep me in Thailand, and that was what I was interested in. I quit my job. I'd worked there for 15 years, and it came to them as a shock. I just told them I was moving to Thailand. I could have done that job from Thailand, and because I worked there for a long time, I did say to them, well, while I'm quitting, if you don't want me to do this remotely, I can. I'll happily stay. But they weren't even prepared to entertain the idea. Walking out of that job, they told me not to bother with notice and I could just leave and they would pay me to the end of the month. I felt, though, completely liberated, like I wasn't attached to that part of the world anymore. I always felt like I was living something and doing something that I shouldn't have been, but I was attached. Not because of feelings or a shared history or culture, but attached because that's where I got money from and I needed money to live. That was what was attaching me there, and now I didn't need to be. It felt great. I had £15,000, which I planned to take with me. Because I was 52, I was eligible for the retirement visa, but with the money I had, it wouldn't have been enough to do the extension. You need 800,000 baht in the bank for that, and £15,000 wouldn't have even been 700,000. I thought I would worry about the visa when I got there. I didn't know there were some options available, and I read online that there were. So I spoke to an agent just to get a retirement visa in Pattaya, paying a bit of money instead. I know you're not technically meant to do that, but the options is open, so I plan to take advantage of it. I didn't have anything to sell to give me any extra money, I had a car, but that was only worth £400. I didn't have anything else. I had the deposit I was going to get back for the place that I'd rented for years, but that was not a lot either. Not even enough for the plane ticket. So what I'm trying to say is I was going with very limited funds. Yet I felt that the money was for a few different things. The first thing, of course, would be for the plane ticket to get there. Then I would need the visa, find a place to live, and that should be what I would need to spend some money on. I might need to buy some things for the place that I rented, and then the rest of it was just there for an emergency. The idea wasn't to touch it while I was working, and if I found that I was between jobs, then I could dip into it for a while I was looking for another. I thought it would give me a year leeway, and that seemed like it was quite a long time. I never had any children with my ex-wife, and I wasn't very close to anybody else in my family, so I didn't really have anyone to say goodbye to. Just one day I'm in England, and the next I'm flying to Thailand to start a new adventure. This was going to be, and was meant to be, my salvation. This was going to be when my life finally started to make sense, when I finally started to feel like I had control of my own life by being able to be where I wanted to be. Also, to do the things I wanted to do. Arriving in Thailand as somebody who's there to live as opposed to holiday is the best feeling in the world. I can remember how excited I was, almost giddy as I was walking through Suvarnabhumi airport as I got off the plane, looking at other people around me thinking that they're just there on holiday while I'm not. I felt like I was a cut above everybody else there, and it was a great feeling that you can only get if you've experienced moving to Thailand. I say trying to move to Thailand really because I honestly didn't think that moving to a different country would give you the same feelings. You might be excited to be there, but you're not in a place that is like this. Only Thailand gives you these feelings like you're somewhere like nowhere else, and that's why I was so excited to be there. I didn't care that there was a long line at immigration. I wasn't there on holiday thinking I needed to make the most out of every second. I was there for good. I did have a very big bag with me because I'd taken quite a lot of personal items that I didn't want to leave behind. I know many people say that when you're starting again in a different country, you should travel light and not bring a lot of junk with you. But I took quite a lot of junk with me. That was one of the things I regretted because I never thought I was going to have to leave. I perhaps should have just left some of the stuff in storage. There was one YouTuber that I watched who always filmed himself doing the flight from the UK to Thailand, and also how he got to Pattaya afterwards. So I called the same firm that he used, and that person was waiting for me at the airport with a sign with my name. She took me out to the car, and not very long later, we're arriving in Pattaya, where my new life was going to be centered. It's one of those heart-pumping moments when you get there, thinking about all the amazing things that are going to happen over the next few weeks, months, and years. I got to my hotel and lugged out my very heavy bag, gave a nice tip to the lady driver, and made my way into the hotel, checked in, went up to my room, went onto the balcony, and just started to survey Pattaya. That was the moment I felt was going to be the start of an amazing new life. It turned out that it was the start of a mix of emotions, from extreme ups to the worst downs ever. It was going to be a ride that saw me starting out like I meant to go on, yet things don't often tend to go according to plan. My first night in Pattaya was always going to be a wild one. I had no intention to hold back. I was going to enjoy myself because it had been a very long time since I'd been in Thailand. Leaving the hotel that evening was one of the best feelings I'd ever had, and that night was one of the best nights I'd ever had. And the following day, while I planned to go and look for somewhere to live, I wasn't feeling very well, so I just spent the rest of the day in bed, and I started to feel a bit better and went out that night as well. I did that the following night, and when I woke up the morning after, I'd had 3 big blowouts. That's when I decided that I needed to stop that, find somewhere to live, and get cracked into work because I had a few days off with the move. I did plan it all around the weekend, so I was flying on Friday, I had a day off then, and I had the Saturday and Sunday free. That was when I was going to find somewhere to live, but I didn't. So Monday was when I went to look. I knew from all the videos that I watched how easy it was to rent somewhere in Thailand. I can remember renting the place I had back home after I got divorced from my wife. The amount of paperwork that you had to provide, references, credit checks, it always felt like moving into a place to live shouldn't be difficult. I get that it's more difficult to get people out of a rented property at home than it is in Thailand, but I never felt like it should be that difficult. But that Monday, even though I was quite badly hungover, I left the hotel around 11 a.m. and went to an agency that many people recommended. I told them what I was looking for, what my budget was, and half an hour later, they'd already picked out 5 or 6 condos that fit my requirements. They took me to look at the first one, and it was already good enough. It was a small 1-bedroom unit, not directly in the centre of Pattaya, but close enough that you could walk, and it was only 10,000 baht a month. I told them I'd take it, so they contacted the owner, a contract was drawn up, and I paid 2 months' deposit as well as 1 month in advance. That day I had the key, and the place already had everything that I would need in order to live there. It had all the cutlery, plates, dishes, TV, microwave, a place to hang clothes, the washing machine. It had absolutely everything that I needed. So all I did need to do was buy bedding and towels. And an office desk and a chair, but that was one thing that I expected to buy anyway. It didn't have an internet connection, so I went to the company that I was told by the agent that supplied the building, and I asked them to install it. And they said they would come the following day to install it, and I thought that was amazing. I couldn't believe how quick they did it. That would mean that evening I would need to find somewhere to work to do the job, but in 2022 they didn't really have many internet cafes like they used to do, so I had to sign up for a phone package that allowed me to use the hotspot for the first night's work. The hours were very unsavoury, and it was difficult living all day before you'd even started work, and then starting work. But I thought that I would get into a routine, so I would just wake up before I needed to start work, and then work through the night, sleep through the days. When I had time off, it would be perfect, because it would be night time, and in Pattaya, that's the time I wanted to be there. Everything sounded like it was going to work out well. They came to install the internet the following day, and once that was installed, my monthly bills that were non-negotiables averaged about 14,000 baht on a typical month. That meant that out of the money I was going to be earning, I would have round about 30,000 baht to cover my visa and living expenses. I did settle into this way of life quickly. I was happy with the decision I made, and I paid 20,000 baht, which got me the visa. And a month goes by and I get paid. I pay my bills and month 2 starts, and I'm thinking that this is the best thing in the whole world. I'm living in Thailand, working online, and although I have to work very unsociable hours, I'm still living in Thailand, and I'm still able to go out when I want to. That may be a bit of an exaggeration because I couldn't go out when I wanted to, because I couldn't afford it with the money I earned. But out of my savings, a little bit I needed to spend, I still had most of the money left. One concern was that out of the money I was earning, I wasn't really saving anything, and I would need to have saved some money every month so that when I got to 60 or 65, I would have still been able to live in Thailand and just live off the money I'd saved from working online. That's what my plan was. What I didn't plan on was meeting a girl. I also didn't plan on extreme lack of job security. Those 2 things I never planned on, and I guess that was probably where the most important things that I should have taken into consideration before I did what I did. I should have known that there were things that I could do when I was in Thailand, and there were things that I couldn't do when I was in Thailand. With what I was earning, having a girlfriend should have been something I never even entertained, and thinking that the job I would have would last until I decided I didn't want it anymore, that was another mistake. That doesn't come yet though. I was working probably for 3 months, when before the end of the 3rd month, when I spoke to my manager for a weekly catch-up, they said there was going to be a temporary stop of the position for a week, but I would be able to catch up after. That of course meant for that week I wasn't working, I wasn't earning, but the way he explained it, it was a very rare incident, and it was only a one-off. I didn't really think too much about it, and I wasn't overly concerned. I thought it would be nice to have a bit of a break anyway, although it would have been nice to have been paid for the break, but it was that week that I wasn't working that I did spend all the time going around Pattaya at night. I never had the chance to do that since I'd been working all the time, so I thought I might as well take advantage of that fact that I had a spare week. That was when I met a girl that wasn't just a girl that worked in a bar. She was a girl that made me think what would be the harm in having a girlfriend. I don't know what it was about her, but I think it was something to do with the fact that she seemed to stand out from all the other girls that worked in the same bar. I always had it in the back of my mind, you shouldn't get involved with a girl that works in a bar. You shouldn't get involved with a girl that works in a bar. I kept telling myself, yet I couldn't help myself after I met her and it just happened. It happened to be during the first day that I was out, not working that week. And because I met her then, it meant I went there every single night. I knew almost straight away that I liked her, and I wanted to spend all the time with her. And that's when you start to understand that Thailand isn't just a cheap country where you can go for cheap drinks and a cheap holiday. During that week, I spent £1,500 out of my savings. That was over 10% of what I had left, and it was spent on 1 week going out around Pattaya in Thailand. That was more than I earned in a month. When I was doing it, I was just going along with it because I was having a good time. Yet when that week came to an end and I started back at work, I felt really upset that I spent so much money on having a good time. I felt like it should have been cheaper than that. I felt like £500 would have been a fair price for what it did. But you start to understand that Thailand isn't that cheap. But when I start back at work, the girl that I've met was still working in the bar, and I decided I didn't want her to work in the bar anymore. I admit it, someone who thought that girls didn't like working in the bars. I thought it was all their dreams to leave the bars, so I thought that if I asked her to move in with me, she'd be really grateful that she didn't have to work there anymore, and she wouldn't expect much more money because she didn't have to work. I knew that because she was 21, that she wanted to have a good time with her life, but because she didn't have any children or seemed to have any commitments to her family back where she came from, I thought that she would be happy just to be able to have someone elevate her position in the world. I thought by her latching onto me, that would improve her position, even though not necessarily financially, and I had all these opinions though, and it only made sense to me to ask her to move in, so I didn't have to think about her working there anymore. It was difficult to go back and see her, but I sent her a message because I'd already had her number and asked her how she would feel about it. She didn't respond that evening, and I was working so I couldn't go and see her, so she didn't respond the evening after. So I thought I'd have to wait until the weekend to see her, and then see what she thought. That week at work dragged by very slowly. All I thought about was her. I missed her, and when the Saturday came around, I was at her bar straight away. She seemed to be very happy to see me. I was very happy to see her, and I told her that I'd thought about her ever since I spent that week with her, and asked her what she'd feel about becoming my permanent girlfriend. I think when I said that, I had one vision of what this was going to mean, and she had a totally different vision of what this was going to mean. For me, what it meant was she'd stopped working in the bar, she could come and live with me, and I would help support her financially because she was no longer working. I thought 10,000 baht a month would be an incredibly generous amount of money. I never talked to her about the nitty-gritty details of what I was thinking. It wasn't meant to sound in any way transactional. I just thought that we could talk about things like that when we were actually in a relationship. Just like any people in a relationship would do. What a certain person's role is, what the other person's role is, and that's what I was thinking I would get to when the time came. But I really did like her. She was an incredible girl, and I was in love with her. I will admit to that. I was madly in love with her. And when she said she'd be happy to see if she would be able to live with me, I thought I would do everything I could to make her as happy as possible. I was so happy when I felt that she liked me as well. I thought she must have the same feelings for me as I did for her because she seemed to be so happy when I talked about her moving in with me. That evening we went out for something to eat, and the following morning we went to her rented room and picked up her things. She rented a place that was only 3,000 a month. She rented it herself, not with anyone else, and I told her she might as well give it up so she didn't need to pay. The fact that she was not needing to pay I thought was great as well. We took her things to my place, she moved in, and we spent the rest of the Sunday just going around Pattaya having a good time. That was the first time I ever went jet skiing, and we both really enjoyed it, and I started to feel like my time in Thailand is getting better and better. We hadn't talked about how the relationship would look yet, but when Monday came around and I was going to work, I told her that I would give her 10,000 as an allowance so that she could still have her independence and do the things she wanted to do with her friends occasionally. She said almost immediately that that wasn't enough. She said it in a way that really hurt me because I thought we were in the start of a loving relationship. But what she said was that she did need to send money to her family, even though she didn't have any children, And she sent them 5,000 a month because she sent that to them. She wanted 10,000 for herself. So she said 15,000 a month would be okay to start with. I quickly just agreed to it without saying anything else, just to get that conversation out of the way. It felt awkward talking about that kind of thing, but I didn't think it was too bad when she explained it the way she did. It was the best feeling in the world to have a girlfriend, and those next 2 weeks when I was working, I had the time of my life. Not because I was working, but because I was living in Thailand. I had a girlfriend, and the weekends we could do anything we wanted. It was at the end of that 2 weeks that, on the Friday, when the job I was doing told me again that there was going to be a week off. I had to ask them a bit more clearly why they didn't make it apparent when I took the job. They told me last time that it was a week off, that it was going to be the last one and it would be rare. Yet now they were saying it again and it wasn't even a month later. That meant I was going to be earning less money, and now I had commitments that meant I needed at least 30,000 baht a month just to pay for accommodation and to help support my girlfriend. I decided that, as it was only another one-off, we might as well enjoy that week together, and then we could use it to really get to know each other, and also travel around and see something outside of the craziness of Pattaya. I knew I would need to use some of my savings for this, but the way that work was going when I was doing the job, I was told that I was probably going to get some kind of salary increase after the first 3 months. I was very confident that that was going to happen, so we decided that we would go not too far away to Samet Island. She told me it was a very nice island. She'd been before. I'd never been, so because it was not too far, we thought it would be great to just spend a week there. I didn't know how much it was going to cost. I thought maybe £1,000 for the week. I thought that was going to be for everything: the hotel, going out to eat, boat trips, fishing trips, and cocktails on the beach. Just things like that. I didn't book a hotel, we just turned up, and the hotels on the island were more expensive than I thought they were going to be, at least for a hotel that was reasonable. Ultimately, what that meant was I spent about £2,000 on that week away, but I was trying to forget that I was using emergency money for this trip because I was using that trip as a way to build an even bigger connection to my girlfriend. I was even starting to think about getting married, maybe even having a family. I had all kinds of thoughts and dreams when I was with her, and I thought that, okay, I might spend a bit of money, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. I did have one of the best times with my life during that week, but when we got back and I looked at my finances a few days before I was going to start working on the Monday, I did think that I now needed to start cutting back. Out of the £15,000, I had about 9,000 left, so it would just be a question of using my income to live on and nothing else. Monday came around and I joined the normal call, and then something happened that really shocked me. They said, "We told you that the week off had been extended to 2 weeks, so you don't need to work this week." That meant I wasn't going to be paid for that week either, and they hadn't told me. When they realised that they hadn't told me, they didn't say sorry or anything like that. They just said, "You can't do it this week," and that's it. Absolutely no job security, but they promised me that I could start working the following Monday. I think it's because they promised me that I didn't think about trying to look for something else. So for that week, we just spent most of the time relaxing and watching films and not spending much money. It was also great to spend time with her in that sort of setting as well, normal family life. And she seemed to be happy doing everything together. So I was happy, although having to spend a little bit of extra money that I didn't really want to spend. I did start again the following Monday working, and we got back into that routine, and that went on for a month. During that month, I didn't go into my savings once, yet I was scrimping and saving in order to be able to keep to the commitments I had. As far as I was concerned, having a girlfriend that I was happy with and in love with was more important than eating a nice meal. I was happy to eat cheap street food and things from 7-Eleven if that meant I could have the best girlfriend in the world. And that month was great. But it was always that underlying pressure that I felt because I wasn't saving anything and I was just getting by. For people who are going to work online in Thailand and you're going to be doing something basic that doesn't pay a lot of money, you're going to be getting the feelings that although you're in Thailand, where you want to be, you're not progressing in life like you might be if you were at home. Although I wasn't progressing at home in the sense that I was saving, I was still paying into the system that would give me a pension when I reached a certain age. However, I was responsible for my own future now in Thailand, and all I was managing to do was use what I was earning to live a basic existence and to help support my girlfriend. Short term, though, it did feel great. The next month, however, they told me again that there was a week off, and that was the first time that I was actually really angry with them. I told them when they offered me this job, they never once mentioned that there would be times when I wasn't needed. This was meant to be 40 hours a week, permanent, and that's what I expected and what I needed it to be. I told them that it was really unacceptable, and what I thought they were going to say was, okay, well, we'll allow you to work. But what they said instead was, well, I think it's probably better if you stop working for us if you have these opinions. This happens with our company, and we're not going to pay you when we don't need you. That's why we're using this website. That's why we don't have actual employees, because we want the flexibility to be able to pay for people when we need them and not when we don't. It's as simple as that. So we think it's best if you stop working. I was in a meeting with 2 people at the company, and I thought that me being angry would have shown I was passionate about working for them. I didn't want to stop. Yet what happened had backfired, and now I didn't have a job anymore. No severance, no warning period, no few weeks' notice, no being given a month's salary so I can find a new job, nothing. And that was a very difficult time. What it meant was now I needed to find a new job. Not only that, I needed to find one quickly, so I started applying for more positions. It took me a month to be offered a new job. However, this one was slightly less money than before. This one was £900 a month, although the hours were a bit better, meaning I was starting early afternoon as opposed to late at night. I preferred that, although with £900 a month and still keeping up the appearances with my girlfriend that I was able to live this life, I wasn't doing anything apart from existing myself while making sure my girlfriend could still have a good time without thinking that I can't actually afford it. This is what my mentality was, and that job was better than the last one in every way, apart from that it was less money. So I did continue to look for other things to do at the same time. What I'm finding is I'm eating into my savings now because after a certain length of time, there are only so many times you can go into 7-Eleven and eat food and not start to get really depressed. So I thought, well, I'm in the early stages of this Thailand life. Maybe if I just give myself a few £100 extra a month out of my savings, that's going to make all the difference. It did make the difference in the short term. The first 3 months I've supplemented income out of my savings, but now my savings had dropped to about £6,000. I wasn't able to find anything else in those 3 months, and the work I was doing just meant I was existing. When you develop a routine, when you find a job, maybe you start to feel like it's boring or you don't like it. But after you've done it for a certain amount of time, it becomes normal and just what you do every day. So when they told me after another month that they didn't need me anymore, it felt like the routine that I developed, being able to live on that budget I had, that was ripped away, and I now needed to look for something else. I wasn't able to continue with the same routine, and that meant I was spending even more money out of my savings. And that was the first time that my girlfriend asked for money that wasn't part of the allowance that I gave to her. I don't want to bore you with what she needed the money for, but it was 50,000 baht, just over £1,000, and she said it was a one-off. She said she would have paid for this herself, but because she wasn't working, I was her only choice, and it was non-negotiable. She put it to me in a way where I felt like I had no choice, so I had to agree, and I gave her the money. I'm not working now when I'm using my savings, and I want to stay in the relationship because I'd already asked her to marry me, and she said she would. I think she thought I was a lot more financially sound, and I wanted to keep up the appearances because I didn't want her to think that I wasn't able to give her the life she thought she was going to get when she was with me. I always thought that I would land a great job that paid me double what I was paid, and that would make everything right. I just thought it was a matter of time until I found something that I enjoyed a lot more and that paid me more. And that never seemed to come though. I found another job not long after, which was similar to the last, but that lasted 2 months. And then I'm eating into more savings, and I'm not able to find a job that pays me how much money I actually need to be able to live in Thailand. That's what I'm starting to understand, and what I should have done is break it off with my girlfriend before it was too late. But I was madly in love with her, and I didn't want to be apart from her. I spent the next month after I lost that job just on the computer for 10 hours a day looking for opportunities. I worked out that I would have needed, at a minimum, to continue what I was doing, around £1,700 a month. But the problem was there were people who were willing to do these jobs for a lot less. When you're in meetings with people, you see who else is doing these jobs that live in countries like Thailand. And they all seemed to be a lot younger than I was. They didn't seem to have any connections, and they all seemed to not be very ambitious or driven. Not that I was, but I always thought I deserved more because I was older and had more experience. But they didn't care about experience. It was simply just a case of having someone who had an English accent. I did find another job, but this one was even less than the last one, £800 a month. I had to take it because I needed to make money. But my savings were going down now and they dropped all the way to £2,000. And when my girlfriend asked me for even more extra money, I just had to tell her I'm sorry, I can't give you any more money right now. I still gave her the allowance, but the fact that she was asking for more money just meant that if I gave it to her, that could completely destroy me financially. We didn't last much longer. She was complaining that we didn't go out when I wasn't working. She was complaining that we didn't go places and do things. And she was comparing her being with me to her friend with her boyfriend. When she left, I was completely heartbroken. I thought I was going to be with her for the rest of my life. I'd been working really hard to try to make it possible, but that made me understand that Thailand was even more difficult to stay than I thought. The most difficult thing was knowing that she went back to work in the bar. That really hurts because the fact that working in the bar was better than staying with me. That made me realise that all the thoughts and opinions I had about the girls that worked in the bars were completely wrong. I thought that she would have been happy with me, but it turns out she wasn't. And all it had done was cost me a lot of money. That was all it had done, cost me a lot of money and made me really upset. The £800 a month job lasted for the next 6 months. I was trying hard to find other jobs at the same time, but I wasn't able to find anything good enough. In my spare time, I even called companies that employed people that did the work I did back home in England and told them I'm able to do the same job remotely and I charge a lot less money. I thought if I could find a company that wanted to try my services for maybe £1,300 a month, that would make all the difference. But I didn't have any luck doing that. After 6 months of doing that job, earning that amount of money, not saving anything at the end of the month, not being able to go out very many times because I couldn't afford it, not being able to go anywhere because I couldn't afford it, that was when I understood that I'd completely failed in Thailand. While it was possible for me to have remained there, or it would have been possible, it was just the bitter feeling that everything that I wanted was all around me, yet I wasn't able to partake. I was broken-hearted because of what happened with my girlfriend. I stayed with her for quite a long time and I thought we'd have been together forever. I thought we were going to get married. I thought many things were going to happen. But I think as soon as she found out that I didn't have very much money, she lost interest. Relationships shouldn't be about money, but you've got to learn your lesson some way. I wanted to share my story because I tried to make Thailand work and I failed. Yet when I was doing those jobs, I was speaking to other people who were working doing the same jobs. They also lived in Thailand. But they seemed to be happy, just existing, and I thought I would be, but I wasn't. If you're going to just exist, you might as well just exist in your own country, because at least there are things to fall back on if things go wrong. At least you're paying into the system, so you're going to get a pension at some stage. At least you've got free healthcare if you need it, and that's something that I didn't understand until I lived and I tried. I also think it's important to share a story like this because it goes against what many people are telling you on YouTube, talking about how you can live on a certain amount of money and what kind of life you can live. They make it look so glamorous, yet it's not the life that many people will enjoy. The sort of life you can have in Thailand on the amount of money I was earning was nowhere near enough to be able to enjoy Thailand in the way I wanted to enjoy it. I really regret trying to go to Thailand because it's made me a lot more jaded than I was even before. I went into it thinking I would always regret not trying, but I honestly feel like I regret trying more than not. It's difficult to come to terms with your lot in life when it doesn't live up to your expectations, and that's something that I've lived with ever since I had to return. I suppose the fact that I had so little money to start with meant that I didn't have a lot to lose, and that's the only thing that I take solace from. The guys that go there and lose their life savings, when their life savings could have given them a good time in Thailand forever, that's something that I guess would be a lot worse than me who lost £15,000. It was also the heartache that went along with my relationship because I loved her more than I ever loved anyone, and that made me extremely upset. If you're thinking about going to Thailand and trying to live the digital nomad lifestyle, what I would do if I was doing it again, which I most definitely won't be doing it again, but I would go to Thailand and live for a month on the amount of money that I would be able to earn if I was there. I would spend the 8 hours I should be working doing something on the computer to simulate what work would be like, and then I would make a decision afterwards. I think doing something like this would prevent many people from diving in at the deep end to do something that they shouldn't really be doing. I think about Thailand every single day. I watch Thailand videos every single day because that's the only way I can actually be in Thailand. It's not as good as being there in person, but it's the next best thing. And I don't know if I'll ever have a chance to go to Thailand again because I'm working to survive and I've got nothing that could take me there. I suppose all I can say is that at least I tried, but I regret trying more than anything.